Welcome to the Verde Verdict Sports Show. I'm your host, Jacob Verda. We're going to be breaking down LSU versus Wofford. Big ending to that game. I feel like people smelled it coming as the end drew closer. The beginning of it, kind of a snooze fest. You saw Wofford come out hot, as we mentioned earlier on our Wednesday stream. But we're going to bring you live streams every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, as we've been saying. We got some college football playoff news. We got some recruiting news. A little bit of CFB 25 news, nothing too big, but they released an in-depth, preview of the game, and that was pretty interesting. But to start things off, LSU versus Wofford. Wofford's bats were hot. They started off 2-0 lead, 3 hits through 2 innings, and LSU didn't get their first hit until the third. And that, this is kind of why Jay Johnson's mentioning pitching Gage jump when he did, making sure, you don't take these guys lightly. They third in the NCAA in batting average. They are second in runs. They were pretty, heavy on the offensive side. And we knew this coming in. We knew this was going to be a fight. I honestly figured there would be more runs scored. It was a little bit on the lower end. However, it was pretty competitive through and through. And there was times where I honestly thought LSU wasn't going to be able to pull it off. But kind of just mentioning a side note, I thought that the fans traveled really well. It's pretty interesting. All the way to North Carolina, East Coast, pretty far flight. Hell of a drive if you're going to take that. And it was still pretty loud. I think LSU fans normally travel consistently. You're not going to be really too surprised by that. But I did want to note, it seemed like a home game at times. They turned the Bosch to the box, if you ask me. Moving towards the middle, Gage jump kind of picked up, got a little hot, struck out 3 batters in the 5th inning, all 3 batters. Then he went on 5 strikeouts in a row. And toward the 7th inning is when you saw LSU start to, go on their late run, as they have famously patented throughout this postseason baseball run this year and even last year. But Monster Malam, solo home run, LSU goes 2-1 in the 7th, and then you move into the 8th inning. Gage Jump is still on the mound. He's, nearing that 100-pitch count. Everyone's kind of wondering what's going to happen. Boom, there goes the solo home run for Wofford by Jack Renwick. Bumps the lead up to 3-1. Naturally, Gavin Guidry comes out. Gage Jump sits down. And it makes sense. Your arm's getting tired. It's late in the inning. I'm surprised he even stayed that long, but it just goes to show how competitive this team actually was and how much respect Jay and company held for Wofford. But Gavin Guidry comes out. He does a pretty solid job of coming in and saving it. Michael Braswell in the 8th inning, as you know, solo home run, cracks the lead to 2-3. And then Jared Jones comes out and hits a moonshot. That man is a unit. They flash back to his Tennessee performance in the SEC title game, and he hit a 471-foot bomb. I just want to say there's not a lot of major leaguers that are going to hit something that far. Almost 500 yards in baseball. Sure, they got the aluminum bats, and it's not wood bats, but all I want to say is that is a unit, and he showed it again today, tying the game up in the 8th inning, and umpires were a little bit mad at him. They said, oh, I want you to keep it moving. Don't stare down the pitcher. Don't stare down your beautiful home run that tied the game. But didn't really find anything wrong with it. 9th inning comes around. LSU comes in. Griffin Herring, 3 strikeouts in a row. The pitching was hot today. I'll give LSU that. They played a team that really took it to them early on. They got comfortable, and I think, things shaped out pretty decently on the defensive side of the ball. Kept the lead at 3-3. Give LSU their chance in the bottom of the 9th to do what they do best and walk it off. And quite frankly, who would you want at the plate right now besides number 4? Monster Milo comes in, boom, second home run of the game. Honestly, second home run in 2 innings. Back-to-back plate appearances, back-to-back home runs. LSU takes this one, and now they're going to move forward to playing tomorrow at 4 p.m. on the winner of the UNC Long Island U game. Now, seems like that could be UNC, but people might have been writing off Wofford today. People might have been surprised at what Wofford brought to the table. So what I would say is, don't count Long Island U out. This could be an interesting game. We could have LSU playing another unfamiliar team, but that's what the NCAA tournament's all about. It's all about hitting your stride at the perfect time, whether it be baseball, basketball, or inevitably the college football playoff that you'll see this year. But we'll, switch gears here, kind of get away from LSU baseball. We'll preview that side of the bracket again on Monday whenever we're with G Sports. But we do have some big news for LSU football recruiting. We have the list of the recruits that will be attending this weekend. Some big names coming to town. A lot of 5 stars. couple 4 stars, and I think this is going to be one of the bigger pushes for their 2025 class to be finalized and legitimized. To start things off, the biggest recruit I think that's strolling into Baton Rouge, Khalid Lockett, 5-star wide receiver, number 18 in the country. He's talented. We'll kind of talk a little bit about him later on. Moving down the list, DJ Pickett, 5-star cornerback, number 6 in the country. We talked about him last week. This is a must. If you have to circle any name left on this 2025 list that you do not have a commit from, it's DJ. Moving on, Solomon Thomas, 5-star inside offensive lineman, number 14 in the country. You got Jamie French, 5-star wide receiver, number 19 in the country. Dorian Brew, 5-star corner, number 29. Damian Shanklin, 4-star edge, number 85. Deshaun Brain, 4-star tight end, number 94. And Micah DeBois, 4-star inside offensive lineman, number 121. So LSU hosting 8 pretty much near top 100 recruits this weekend. And it's kind of at an interesting period. People really wouldn't have guessed at this point in the summer. Freshmen just moved in. It's kind of dead. Fall camp hadn't started. Spring ball just ended. Most people are going on their vacations. Most people are kind of taking a step back and relaxing. But LSU making another big push into this recruiting class. And I mean, look, you gotta put the work in like this to stay at the top of the recruiting rankings, to stay number one, number two, number three, whatever LSU sliding around at on your different recruiting boards. But I think when you're bringing in these names, it's very indicative of where LSU's at in terms of respect and legitimacy amongst all of these recruits. They're pretty high, highly ranked, and kind of, it seems like the premier destination. I can't think of many other colleges that'll really get the credit where credit is due, besides, maybe in Ohio State, maybe, at Georgia. You're kind of seeing Texas jump in the recruiting scene a little bit here as well. And that's going to play a big role into a lot of things. Texas, because now they're joining the SEC. You can't really run from them anymore if you're a team wanting to recruit, because you do have the crutch in recent years of Texas just not being at the top of college football. Texas not really having an opportunity to make it far, but now all that goes out the window. They're in the SEC. They're playing the tough games. They're playing the ranked opponents. They're going to be in a perfect opportunity to be able to shine when the lights are bright. They're going to have a lot of eyes on them that they really never had prior. And plus, they kind of have been making a lot of strides. If you talk about Quinn Ayers, if you talk about just the defensive side of things and what they've done with Sweat, with Byron Murphy. And I mean, look, Bo Davis left, yeah, but that's not the only piece to that puzzle over there in Texas. And Bo Davis was a big part of it. And, it's good that he's at LSU, but Texas will still be a pretty prominent team going forward, despite the changes that they have experienced this offseason. I feel like, if you list out the changes, the direction Sarkisian has his program going in is nothing but positive. Let's kind of look at what the recruits are saying. One of the recruits that's coming in this week from Texas, Khalid Lockett, he's a number 2 wide receiver in this class, behind Decory Moore, of course, who's also from Texas. And the interesting thing about these two guys, they've been kind of buddy-buddy since about 8th grade, their junior high days, been talking about playing with one another. And they both have offers from LSU, but they also both have offers from Texas. And it seems like they are very interested in playing together, being the duo, keeping this dream alive at pursuing this thing at the next level. And if, you're LSU, it seems like if you get Khalid Lockett, you have a better chance of securing Decory Moore. You already got that commitment. Sure, he decommitted, he reopened his recruitment, but he only reopened it to 3 other teams. I feel like you're still in arm's reach of that push. Khalid Lockett said in an interview with On3 that, he was surprised by Decory Moore decommitting. And what that kind of said to me was that they've had conversations of being at LSU. They've had conversations of potentially putting on the purple and gold together. So, I mean, if they're going that far as to do that, as to visualize that, as to kind of, talk about that amongst one another, I feel like LSU could still pull it off, could still get the number 1 and 2 wide receiver, join them with the number 1 quarterback, number 1 running back in Bryce and Harlem. One more thing about Decorian, though. I did like in the interview when his father mentioned the NFLSU development of LSU. And that has been the number one thing we've been harping on here on the show, is that LSU can get you to a place that most other colleges really, historically at least, can't get you. I mean, if you look at LSU being wide receiver, what they've done even in recent years. Let's look at this last draft class with Malik and Brian Thomas. It seems like this is kind of the spot to be if you're going to want to take a chance on yourself, stay down and work hard for a few years, and want to change the course of your career. Like, instant success at other programs and instant rewards at other programs is definitely enticing. It's definitely going to motivate a lot of recruits here in college football. But the thing about who comes to LSU and who comes to those programs that, really put you through the mud and get you to a polished product, like maybe an Alabama, maybe a Georgia. I'd even throw Ohio State in there too. These programs are all very developmental, have a big track record, have a lot of people in the league that they could, have a test to their program. So I think that has to be taken into consideration here when you're choosing your program. I like, what Khalid's dad said because it really shows the mindset of where they are. It really shows that they're looking at the big picture. And I feel like that's the main thing Brian Kelly's preaching to these kids is we want you to be, keeping the main thing, and just focusing on what we're preaching to you, winning the national championship, being the better player on the field. We're not getting caught up in NIL, this, that, and the third. It seems like this is a good fit. It seems like also a lot of these kids, they're starting to, if you just kind of look at NIL as a broad spectrum, people are like, well, it's gonna cloudy up college football. It's gonna make these kids this or that. There's a big group of star recruits that are not getting caught up in it as well. So there is that side of it. There is a positive outlook to this. I think that the NIL, it's definitely beneficial. It's definitely necessary. The kids definitely deserve it. And I do think that it's going to be within, I'd say, even 2, 3 years, really, really, really reformed. It's going to be not as loose, not as confusing. People aren't going to have as much as an issue with it. When things are new, it kind of gets people confused, kind of gets people up in arms, and it's nothing different with this. Moving on to Bryce Underwood, I'll give you a little pulse check on him and his recruiting because people see Decoria Moore commit and then decommit, and panic ensues. People are wondering, oh my God, are we going to lose anybody else? Like, what's going on? I would have to say that out of all the recruits LSU has gotten a verbal commitment from recently, Bryce Underwood is the most locked in. He's the most committed to LSU. He's the most focused for sure. He's recruiting kids to the class. And the thing I will mention is you keep Bryce Underwood, you're guaranteed star players. I mean, yeah, losing to Decoria Moore, it's going to hurt. That's a talented generational athlete who is the number one wide receiver. I'm not saying you want to lose him, but that's why the number two wide receiver is coming into LSU this weekend because of someone like Bryce Underwood. That name, that type of caliber of player will continuously draw in interest, draw in people that are going to be wanting to play with him. I feel like, this shows the trajectory of the program for sure when you have generational talent after generational talent in that quarterback room. Not even just a quarterback room, but you're going to keep putting it in the wide receiver room. And also a big, big, big um, boost is going to be Cortez Hankton. He's a phenomenal recruiter, but he's a phenomenal coach too. He will develop you. He'll hold you accountable. He'll be, your mentor. He'll be in your corner. And I think that it appeals to a lot of people. It appeals to a lot of players, but it also appeals to their support systems who I think, in the big picture, really understand what is best for the player for the most part. Not in every situation, but I just think like the approach that LSU takes to getting kids in, making sure that their mind is right, making sure that they're on the same page, making sure they're ready to get into a locker room and gel into the professional environment that is LSU. It seems like Bryce is fitting perfectly into that. He's already pretty mature for his age. He's coming straight out of high school, and he's very well spoken. Seems to be a pretty respectable kid. And it's like, that's what you need to see from someone you're pretty much handing the keys to of the organization. You always say, your quarterback, your franchise piece, he's getting the keys. He's like your CEO. He's he's the face of this company, so to speak. So I think LSU's face for the future, it's looking pretty good. It's looking bright. I think this kid's very good at football, very good with off the field things, very good with building a team, very good with keeping chemistry with guys, and people obviously want to play with him. So that's a good thing. Like I said, I think he will be 100%, I'll even say 1,000% committed to LSU for the foreseeable future. Harlem Berry, another big piece to this LSU 2025 recruiting puzzle. New Orleans kid, number one recruit in Louisiana, number one running back in the class. And, we talked about Cortez Hankton being a good recruiter. We talked about him being a huge, benefit to this team and just the coaching staff in general. How about Frank Wilson? Because Coach Frank has been very, very dominant in the recruiting space, not even just in the state, but let's just say generally speaking. And then he goes in and gets someone like Harlem Ferry, keeps him locked in. Harlem made a joke saying he talks to my dad more than I do. Obviously, making fun of it. It's kind of what we said earlier. The LSU staff is really getting, bought in, and I feel like embedding them and just like how involved they're getting is definitely a positive thing. It's definitely it's a developmental attack on all sides of it. It's a developmental attack on the off the field character, on the person in the classroom, and on the athlete on the field. It's not just focused on football and NIL and this, on that, and the other, on winning games. It's really, like they say, graduating champions. And I think that's a pretty cool platform to harp on. It's kind of hard to pick through something like that, especially with what they've done in recent memory. Even you can go in terms of Coach Armstrong or Coach Les Miles' era, but I mean, Coach Brian Kelly's era has been having a lot of success as well, and he's only been here 2 full seasons. His third year, could change a lot. Kind of segueing out of the recruiting, but a little bit related to the recruiting. This one is not so serious, but I thought this was hilarious. You see Drew Brees get inducted to the Saints Hall of Fame, and he does mention, he goes the whole route of, if you love New Orleans, it'll love you back, and that's definitely true. He's talking about how his family's bought into the Louisiana way, just the Louisiana culture in general, and he made mention to how his son loves LSU. He even dropped a Go Tigers in there, but wouldn't that be something to see Drew Brees' son, pick up a pigskin, play some high school football, get recruited, and ultimately sign to play for LSU? I feel like that is almost every Louisiana football fan's dream. I feel, half of the people I know that love the Saints, I can already hear what they're gonna say now. But I think, that would be pretty interesting. I had to note that one here on the stream. When I heard Drew Brees talking about his son potentially going to LSU, I was like, oh man, I can already think of all the headlines, of all the packages people are going to put together. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And lastly, before we get off of the topic of Drew Brees, he also did mention he wants to broadcast some games a little bit. He sees Tom Brady, getting that nice check, getting that getting that Fox money. He's like, man, I think I'm interested in broadcasting games again, and I don't blame him. I think it'll be interesting to hear Drew break down games, and just, he'll probably cover some of the Saints games, or at least some of the games with, mutual interest like that. But wouldn't it be crazy to pair Tom Brady with Drew Brees in a booth and listening to those two football minds break down a game? I feel like that. If you would have told us years ago, I mean, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that Tom and Drew would be sitting side by side on a Sunday night or a Monday night breaking down something on the gridiron, I mean, we would have all been very confused. But it could be pretty cool. It could be something that football fans can enjoy, much like the Manning cast, or, things of that nature. Well, we're going to wrap up the stream here with a little bit of a personal interest, but we're talking about, something football fans can enjoy. I feel like the most enjoyable thing coming out in the college football world in recent times will be college football 25. We're about let's say 2 months, maybe a month and a half away from the official release in mid-July. But we did get some news today. As we said earlier in the stream, they released a deep dive, and they released, a little bit of information on the changes that you're going to see in the game, and just some of the I'm not gonna say modes. It's really not modes. It's more like clarification that it's not gonna be the same game as Madden. A lot of people are worrying, oh, is college football gonna be a reprint? It's just gonna be like a reskin game. Well, I can probably put those conspiracies to rest just with this information here. First things first, progressive player health, wear and tear. The bigger the hit, the bigger the damage. I feel like the hits are going to add up. You're going to have to manage your player health throughout the game as well as throughout the season. You can't have your quarterback getting smoked every single down and expect him to throw the same, act the same, walk the same, run the same, yada, yada, yada. So that'll be pretty interesting, just having to add that realistic dynamic to this video game. It's not going to be just slinging some pig to some computer players running routes. It'll actually have a simulated dynamic to it, which is always good. You like the realism, you like the detail, you like the fact that they're putting effort into the game. So that first thing, that's a good sign. It's a good sign. Moving on to the next thing they announced, player abilities, of course. You're gonna see these. You see them in Madden. You got the X Factor, Superstar abilities, different things of that nature. CAB 25 will have that as well. They're gonna have mental and physical abilities. They're gonna have 8 abilities per player though, and of course they're gonna range in scale of effectiveness. Some will be better abilities than others. Some might be ranked more than others. But all in all, We'll give you an example of one of them. For instance, they have one called Headstrong. You're going to give it to your quarterback, and he'll be able to avoid distractions, or he'll be able to avoid making the mistakes on the road because that goes hand in hand with the Stadium Pulse. They have home field impact, varied on the in-game situations. If it's 3rd and 18, the crowd will react differently comparatively if it's 3rd and 3. The score as well will be very dependent on the crowd's reaction. If you're down, if you're in a high down and distance, best believe you're going to hear some noise, you're going to have some distractions, and your players are not going to play the same. It'll affect their composure, it'll affect their confidence, it'll affect a lot of things. But looking at the game as a whole, they're going to have a revamped passing timer. They're going to incorporate that meter that you see on the throwing, mini games in Madden. But it'll result in more passing control. It's kind of like a fluid little design that they're coming out with. New meter also for the kicking, whether it be a field goal, punt, kickoff, all of those things. You're going to have new hot routes. And one of the cooler things I like, we're going to talk about detail. Not only does every single college football team that's in the game have their own unique playbook, whether they do options, whether they do, RPOs, passes, heavy runs, yada, yada, yada. They're going to all have their own unique playbook. But also, let's talk about the high detail. You could disguise coverages. You can come out into cover 2 and show a cover 3. You can come out in shells. You can really get technical. If you want to get, nitty gritty and be that football brain on the field, you can. This game is really going to be a gift to football fans, I feel like, and we're going to be playing the hell out of it. So get ready for it. We do have a video coming out this weekend. I don't want to announce who it is. I'll let that be suspenseful. But we have a LSU football player coming in playing Madden. So be on the lookout for that one tomorrow. Also, like I said, we're going to be covering the 7-on-7 and all the recruiting visits for LSU football this week. We'll have that report for you Monday at around, it might be toward the afternoon. We got a Kim Mulkey basketball camp coming up. So we might have to, next week only, make our Monday, Wednesday, Friday streams kind of maybe in the afternoonish, maybe toward the early evening, but that'll be temporary, just next week only. G Sports will be coming in on Monday, like we said, recruiting update, big weekend, a lot of people coming in. I'm sure some things are going to happen, some things are going to shake up. You can count on us to let you know what it is. Thanks for watching. Go Tigers.